Which Euro bike parks for a 3-week road trip? Europe is your oyster, as such. And I'm assuming you're coming from the UK. So I think you've got a few options here. You've obviously got the staple Morzine, which has got probably 3 weeks worth of riding in it and more. So you could just head there. But Morzine is a great one which you can just hit hard in a week or a couple of weeks. And this 3-week road trip, I'd imagine, is a bit of a bucket list dream of yours. How often do you get to go and tour Europe for 3 weeks? I think this is a bit of a one-off. So I think I'd recommend taking this time to steer deeper into the Alps. You've got a lot more, there's a lot of bike parks beyond Morzine, but also they're less accessible. So yeah, you go to Morzine, you've got all the access to all the trails right on your doorstep. You go beyond Morzine into Austria, Germany, places like this, and there's the harder to reach bike parks, but are amazing. I think I'd go further afield because you've got the 3 weeks. I'd be tempted just to go straight down to Austria as far as you can initially, and then you can work your way back up, maybe even hit a bit of the Port de Slay on the way home. Yeah, I think you've got 3 options in my opinion. Morzine, or the Tarentise area, Tarentaise, which is a bit further down into the Alps, a bit less accessible, but lots of bike parks down there. Or you've got the Austria version. There's a big network of bike parks down there, but obviously to drive down from the UK, it's a good push. It's another good 5 hours-ish on from the Morzine drive, just to put it into perspective. So yeah, it's a hard to reach area if you're going there for a week, unless you're flying. But then if you're flying down, you haven't got the easy access that you get from having a vehicle. So I would recommend, my personal opinion, make a beeline straight down to the likes of Schlagming, or in Austria, or Leogang. And what they've got down there is amazing. It's a whole different sort of crowd of bike parks that the UK folk doesn't really go to that much. And they're amazing networks of trails. They're brilliant. A bit smaller than the big bike parks, but we've got some massive descents. Like if you look at the likes of Leogang, for example, I'm shooting from the hip here, but you're talking about 1,000-meter descents, and they'll have a handful of these trails that you can sort of splice together, put together. And then next to Leogang, you've got Saalbach, which has then got the same again. So 2 sort of smaller sort of bike parks, but put them together and you've got a massive area. They are linked, I believe. Leogang and Saalbach. You've got Schlagming.
It's scary, isn't it?
What else have you got? Let me just pause this for a second. I've actually got the docs here. There we go, right there. So when you're heading down to this neck of the woods, what you can do is you can get a gravity pass, a gravity card, and it's Europe's leading bike parks, they're claiming. We've got 1 season ticket, 24 European leading bike parks. So you could literally grab this and head down to, and then just tick off these bike parks. I believe some of them are really tight knit and close together, others a bit more spread out. So you've got sort of Innsbruck, and let's just jump into here quick. What have we got? So yeah, we've got Leogang and Saalbach, they're together. Lenzerheide, Fisladis, that's also right next to Leogang. Innsbruck, Winterberg, Maribor. And I'll put a little screenshot of this here. They're all in a tight knit close area. So that, I would probably say, you've got 3 weeks. Head straight down to this area here, Austria, Germany, and get yourself a gravity card and just go and live the dream. You can always come back and do the Morzine adventure or the Lower Alps Tarantise adventure, which is an area that I obviously really like, having hosted our holidays down that area. But you don't get 3 weeks to go and tour the Alps very often. And you might recognise a few names from this gravity card area from the World Cup scene. So a lot of these bike parks have probably, or not a lot, a handful of them have hosted downhill World Cups, cross-country World Cups, and they're very well established bike parks, but you just don't hear about them that often. And one thing that's worth noting about these places is they open earlier and they finish later, so they close later than your Port du Soleil. And I know I keep bringing everything back to Port du Soleil, but that is an area that a lot of people have reference from. A lot of people have visited the Port du Soleil, so I'm sort of basing that as your sort of go-to Alps holiday, which it kind of is. Yeah, so these bike parks, I believe they're opening in May, June, and running all the way through to sort of November, mid-November. It's worth noting, if you do get down there really early season, of course you're going to have the trails to yourself and little to no braking bumps, but you're also potentially going to have quite a bit of snow on the trails. I found this out a few years ago when I went to Leergang. A lot of the trails were under snow, so there was only a handful of runs open. And we also tied this trip in to watch the World Cup, which was brilliant. Loved watching the pros, but also that left a lot of trails closed because the trail network sort of crossed through the main downhill World Cup track. So really we only had a handful of runs to play around with, so it was a bit disappointing in that respect. So it's worth bearing that in mind if you're going, or for when you're visiting these places, if you do. Of course, peak summer, you're going to have all the holiday traffic down there. But I'd say around sort of late June is a really good time to go. Either then or sort of later on in the year, sort of September. But if you're hitting these places mid-season, sort of height of the school holidays, you spend a fair bit of time in queues in these busy places. So the likes of Morzine or the leading big bike parks is effectively turned into a bit of a theme park for a lot of kids, a lot of families. So yeah, if you can stay out of these big holiday times, you're gonna just be able to lap these runs and just come in, jump straight on the chair, back to the top. That's what we found in Schladming. There was literally, I think, one queue we had during the whole week. We had the place to ourselves, and there was a bit of moisture in the ground because we had a bit of rain as well, so it was a really good time to go. I think that's worth giving some thought now, especially now Morzine has become what it is, so popular. I think you really need to think about when you're going so you can get the best out of it. Just my 2 cents. Hopefully that can help a few of you out. Your other option is to head down to the Tarentaise area, which is a few hours further south than the likes of Morzine in France. And you've got another little cluster of mountain bike trails. So the likes of La Plagne, Tignes, Les Arcs, Le Tuile, Meribel, Courchevel, they're all within an hour and a half of each other. So you've got a good network of trails there. So you could easily spend a good few weeks or longer just in that little zone. But you could also combine that area with the Port du Soleil, and you've got yourself a brilliant little trip. But yeah, that is also worth a mention